Hello and welcome to a new series of locomotive construction videos from me, Peter, and the hairy Boris, Ballymac Boris, one of our greyhounds. I can't get rid of him, he stays with me all the time. So during this series of videos you'll probably notice him getting up, moving around. Greyhounds rather do what they like. There's not a lot I can do about it, I'm afraid. So for this series of videos, what we're going to do is we're going to build another DJH kit, and this time we're going to build a G5, which is an 044 tank, and it is one of a couple of kits on the market. A very good kit by Jim McGowan from the Connoisseur range, and this one from DJH, which is actually sold as a beginner's kit, although it is quite expensive for potentially a beginner. But the good thing about it, as you'll see as I go through the box contents, is that you get virtually everything that you need to build the kit. So as for research, yet again it's covered by the Yeadon book, volume 38, which covers the Northeastern F8, G5 and G6 classes. The G5 is the Northeastern Railway NER O class, and 110 were built at Darlington between 1894 and 1901. The one that I'm going to build was one of the last ones built, although much with a lot of pre-grouping railway companies, they tended to use empty numbers when locomotives were built, and this one, the original number was 408. Which tends to suggest it was one of the earliest ones built, but it was actually one of the last ones built. The locomotive that I am going to model is 67342, which at the time that my one is being built for, which is 1954, was based at Northallerton. But it did lead a bit of a wandering life and did end up being allocated to a number of locomotive sheds in the northeastern region, which were quite obscure, including Weir Valley Junction, which is where the Weir Valley line and the line to Tolaw branched off. And if you're fortunate enough to travel on the preserved Weir Valley Railway, you will go through the site of the station, which had a very, very strange method of operation. But I digress. If you want to find out about that, you'll have to look it up. So again, with the research, we've got the Yeadon book. I've also found a nice photograph of my chosen locomotive, although at the time that this picture was taken, the locomotive was allocated to Moulton locomotive shed, which was its last allocation. But it's an offside view, and if you look around, I found some near side views, not least on the website of the preserved Wensleydale Railway, where this locomotive operated from Northallerton to Hawes Junction, Garsdale. So what we've got is we have got our kit nicely boxed up from DJH. So I had to wait quite a while for this to come because they were short of some parts, but it's here now. In the meantime, I've also got an MX645R DCC chip programmed with It's a J15, but it's also a also a Wurzel engine, so it should be okay. It's a Wurzel two-cylinder engine. It's from YouTube's, and I also, in the meantime, ordered and had etched, which you may just about be able to see if I kid the camera's autofocus. I've got a 67342 shed plate, a 51J smokebox plate, and two Darlington small works plates with its original number 408 on, and you can see that they actually go on the, so I'll hold it up a bit better, come a bit closer. They actually go on the front splasher. So as usual, you get a sheet of instructions. I've taken these to work. I've copied them in case these get knackered. So I've got a file, a PDF file, which I've emailed to myself. It's on my laptop downstairs, and of course I can print them off if necessary, additional instructions. So this kit really is designed for, I wouldn't quite say an ultimate beginner, but someone with a little bit of experience in building model locomotives. And there are a number of ways that you can go about assembling this kit. Now, I've been modelling for 30 odd years, and although I wouldn't quite class myself as a master craftsman, I'm going to use mixed methods of assembling this kit. It says in the instructions that you can glue the kit, and it recommends 2-part 5-minute epoxy for the assembling the kit, but I'm going to use soldering where appropriate, and I'll use glue where appropriate, and we'll see what I've got no idea how it's going to go, because I haven't even unpacked it yet. So I'm going to do that now and show you what we've got in the box. So again, nicely packed, plenty of padding, new DJH logo paper, woohoo! So what we've got inside, we've got a little bit of a note from DJH saying that the Mishima 1833 D motor is not available and a Canon has been substituted. Well, they're roughly the same footprint. The Canon is about 30% more powerful, so we can hardly complain about that. The only difference is that you'll see when we come to mounting the motor, the mounting hole in the motor mount needs to be larger than it is in the instructions, but we'll come to that when we get to it. So the Locomotive is, again, I said, largely for a beginner to make, so it is rather simple for a beginner to make. And what we have here, the cab and the tanks and the bunker are cast as one piece. Little bit of flash on it that needs cleaning off, but we'll do that with the scalpel when we come round to do this in the instructions. So that's the cab and the bunker, and it looks very nice casting, very crisp casting, but again it will need a little bit of cleaning up, and we'll do that when we come to it in the thing. So we'll put that away, make sure we don't drop it. We have Slater's bogie wheels, Slater's driving wheels. We have a set of DJH couplings. we have a Canon motor, as I mentioned. I hope all this goes back in the box, by the way. We have a bunker, the bunker rear. We have the bunker insert. We have the rear bogey. And we'll keep this handy because this is in the first part. So unlike with the A8 where the assembly of it was quite complex, there are only a certain number of steps on this constructing this locomotive. So rather than have multiple videos, we'll go straight into construction after I've finished this introduction. So again, going back, we have bags of castings. We have lost wax castings in brass and nickel silver. We have various electrical bits for fixing the motor. We have a gear set which feels like it's plastic. We'll see how that goes. We have a set of Slater's pickups, and we have a set of, well, we should have somewhere a set of DJH pickups. So there's more. These are to do with the DJH pickups, these plastic bits here. Screws, various screws, handrail knobs, springs for the buffers, everything else like that. So let's see what else we've got. We have a car spoiler, which again has got a little bit of flash on it, but it does, it will clean up easily enough when we come round to it. So we've got the boiler, put that away. Couple more bags to open. Right, we have the foot plate, which is slightly bent, but we should be able to straighten that out quite nicely. And again, there's a little bit of flash that needs removing off this, plus some strengthening points for the casting process. But we'll come to that when we do it. It should be easy enough to straighten this out. Put that away. So what's under there? So underneath all of this we have got the usual bag of wire, tube, rod, and the wire that they supply, plus these things here which you may or may not be able to see. They're the DJH pickups, which you will see where they're needed. We have another bag of etchings, thin etchings, including the lamp irons and some tools for the cab, and some strengthening parts for the tanks. And last but by no means least, we have a sheet of nickel silver. Well, it should be nickel silver. Yeah, it's nickel silver. Nickel silver etchings, an etch sheet, which is for the footplate and the chassis and the coupling rods and various other bits and pieces for the brake gear. So that's quite nice. We've got a few things that we'll need to drill out in this, but will come out when we do it. So there we go, that's the contents of the kit. So you've got everything in the kit barring paint and plates and a DCC controller if you want to make it DCC. You've got everything there that you need to build the locomotive. And although I did say it is relatively expensive as a one-hit purchase, but if you compare it with Jim McGowan's one, that one would probably come out slightly less when you get the motor and the wheels and all the other bits that you need to complete it included. Now, as I mentioned, there were 110 G5 classes of G5 class locomotives, and they were a bit strange because there were quite a few variations within the 110 that were built. Now, this particular kit builds the only one with a later boiler, which is the diagram 39A boiler. Because the boiler comes with the chimney and the dome cast in one place, you will not be able to adapt it. Well, never say never, but it won't be easily adaptable to the earlier one. So if we just refer to the Eden book again, at the start, in the second section, it should say when these locomotives received the diagram 39 boiler. Sorry, they weren't diagram 39, they were diagram 69 boilers. And the locomotives that this kit is designed to make is any locomotive after 1938, which is when the diagram 69A boiler was introduced. So what you would need to do, like most of the northeastern boilers, the redesigned ones had the dome in a different position. In some classes it is quite noticeable how far the dome has been moved. So what you would have to do if you did take this kit is you would have to pick a locomotive that was fitted with a diagram 69A boiler in the period that you were proposing to model it. And it does say in the things for each locomotive, although you do have to decode the boiler numbers slightly to work out which type of boiler it carried at the particular time. The other strange thing about these locomotives is the brakes. Now, when they were built, they all had Westinghouse brakes because the Northeastern was a Westinghouse company and they used their brakes. So they had Westinghouse pumps on the side. Some of the locomotives had vacuum brakes fitted early because they were used as pilots for stock from Heaton to Newcastle Central, and they had vacuum brakes fitted, and they also kept their Westinghouse pump, or didn't. Again, you would have to look at the book and find out. The ones that did retain the Westinghouse pump, the Locomotive had air brakes rather than steam brakes. Some of them were converted, excuse me, some of them were converted to have steam brakes, but as you can see, my particular one that I'm proposing to do, again, as this picture was taken in 1958, you can see that it has still got its Westinghouse pump, so the Locomotive was still air braked. So that's the way we're building 1954, so we'll build it with the Westinghouse pump and the brake and the pipe work and everything, but we will not fit it with the standpipe for the air brakes. Again, the standpipe was moved to the ones that did retain their air brakes. In the kit you get a Westinghouse standpipe, which is a thin one, which is above the buffer beam. That is incorrect for the period that this Locomotive was made. The air brake connection, if it was retained, was actually level with the steam heating pipe, so it should be below the buffer beam. You get variations of the buffer beam in the kit. The buffer beams come with the buffer shanks, housings already cast into the buffer beam. You can get there are ones with group standard buffers, which are the stepped ones, so it's slightly, they're parallel, but the bit at the front where the buffer head goes into the housing is slightly narrower than the bit at the back. They're group standard buffers. And you also get Worsdal northeastern buffers, which are taper buffers. But again, they're also cast into the buffer beam. And you can see, again, it's a bit dark, but you can see that this Locomotive in 1958 was still fitted with its Worsdal buffers, which is what we will use. Again, referring to the buffer beam, this has all been from the research that we've done earlier. The buffer beams on the original Locomotives were steel plate, and they were just attached to the underframe as a steel plate. Later on in their lives, I'm not sure when, but again it says in the introduction to the class in the Eden book, the buffer beams were converted to a steel and wood sandwich, and as far as I can see from the instructions in the kit, this is catered for. The buffer beams are thick, so they're thick, like they've got the wood sandwich, and again you can see on the pictures, although you can't really see very well on this one, you can see that it is a wood and steel sandwich. So everything is catered for a post 1938 Locomotive, which is good, which is what you want. Unless of course you want to build one that's earlier than 1938. If you want one that's earlier than 1938, you're going to have to go for the Jim McGowan kit. So what we'll do is we'll pack everything else away so that it doesn't get damaged, and when we come back I will go through making the first page of the instructions, and we will see how far we get, and maybe we will move on to the second page if we've got a bit of time. I've got new filming equipment, so I will be able to show you what I'm actually doing rather than it being a talking head presentation. I hope that this is more acceptable. Please don't take how I make my kit as gospel, okay? People will have their own way of doing things. Follow my methods by all means, but I'm not setting myself up to be a professional model maker. You must follow my methods. Whatever's comfortable for you, you do it. You will make possibly make mistakes, and who's to say that I won't make a mistake. But please do not think that what I am going to do is the way that you must do things. Follow my methods by all means, but get something that you're comfortable with. Okay, so we'll put all this away and out of the way, and when we come back we will do the page 1 of the instructions, which is building the bogey. Okay, so as promised, here we go, and what we are going to do is we're going to do page 1 of the instructions to start off with, and this is assembling the bogey. Now, as I mentioned before, the bogey is a single casting. It's quite a nice casting. It's got a little bit of flash on it, but not a huge amount. Nothing to be overly concerned about. So what else you will need for this stage is you will need the 2 Slater's bogey wheels. You will need the DJH Plunger Pickups, which are basically phosphor bronze strips, and they are long like this so that you can have them facing up or facing down. Now what we want is we want them facing up, so if you can see on here, if I show it up against my light coloured t-shirt, there are 2 holes in the casing and a small hole above. That is the bit that we want to retain. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our sharp cutters and we are going to cut the bottom piece off. So off both. So there's one bit cut off. We'll keep that because that's useful to have, and we will do it with the other one. And when they're fitted, they will need trimming at the top because obviously they're huge. They're far too big for what we're going to need them to, far too long for what we're going to need them for. So we'll leave them, we'll put them to one side. If you can see them, do they cover there? Okay, so that's the first thing that we need to do. The other thing that we need to do is we need to get the packet out, which has got these polystyrene fittings here, and they are parts of the plunger pickups. Sorry, not the plunger pickups, the wiper pickups. These have got wiper pickups. They pick up off the rear wheel. Now, you may just be able to see or not that there are 2 witness holes in either side. They need drilling out, and we'll drill them out. There's also 8 holes in the top. They will need drilling out as well. Do is drill the holes which are the furthest away on the top. All the holes in the bogey except the centre mounting hole are 1.1. So okay, so we've got 4 holes drilled in the top, and now we will move over to the holes for the pickups. Again, these are also 1.1. Okay, so there's a little bit of flash over where we've got to drill the 4th hole, so we'll use scalpel just to clean that up a bit. Okay, so there you can see possibly we've got 2 holes in each end for the wiper pickups, and what we will do is we will use one of Christina's nail files to clean it up a bit. So that's cleaned up. The other thing that you will need to do at this stage is also clean up any flash and casting marks. So I've done this side already and it's not too bad, and we will do this side. So use a scalpel to get rid of the larger bits and the loose bits. There's a bit on the inside of the frame. Okay, so we've cleaned it up a bit with the scalpel, and then what we'll do is we'll use the nail file We've stolen one of Christina's good nail files as well, so we use that. So it's not actually too bad now for a casting, but what we will do to finish it off is we will use a needle file. I'll just get that out. And I favour diamond coated needle files, so they don't clog up so much with white when you're dressing white metal. So there we are. I'm quite happy with that. You may not be with the amount of dressing that I've done on it, but it's entirely up to you how much. I think that as this is underneath the locomotive and it is going to have wheels and that in front of it, it's not entirely beyond the realms of fantasy that it doesn't need cleaning up too much, because it will be in shadow most of the time. But like most things, it's all personal preference, so you can clean it up as much or as little as you want. Now, as I mentioned in the introduction, they do provide wire in the kits, but I've recently bought from that well-known online sales website these. Now, this is I bought this specifically for doing DCC inside locomotives, where you needed to put wires in strange angles. Now, you can probably use solid core wire, but the ordinary wire, the electrical wire that you would do, doesn't always work very well with this. So what I did is I bought this wire. It's a slightly thicker gauge than the one in the kit, but it's silicone covered, so it's extremely flexible. And that box of reels didn't cost a huge amount of money. I think it was under £10, and you get 7 colours: black, brown, blue, yellow, green, white and red. No grey and no orange, but you can buy those separately from if you want, and they do use, this is what they use for wiring up DCC controllers, you know, DCC chips. So you get a little roll like that which has got 25 meters on, and you can get it in different gauges. This gauge is good allegedly for 0.84 amp continuous. So what we're going to do is we will use this to do our to wire our pickups up. And as I mentioned, the pickups need to be mounted vertically, so they need to be mounted so they're sticking up like that, if you can see. So we've drilled 2 holes, and we've actually got to drill a 3rd hole in the frame end for the wire to pass through, but we'll leave that for the moment until we have got because it's not marked. So what we'll do is we will offer up the wiper pickup, and then we'll use a small drill that fits through the hole to make our witness mark for the 3rd hole in the side where the wire is going to go through. We'll just offer it up again, and that is pretty good. And we'll do the same on the other side. So just use the same wiper again, but turn it over so it's pointing upwards. Line the 2 holes up by eye. And again, that's pretty good. Okay, so we'll just clean these holes up a little bit again, and we'll just check that the wire that we're going to use actually goes through the hole, so that we don't have to, just in case we need to widen it. So there you go. As you can see, the wire has fit through the hole. So we've got quite a long length of wire here, so we'll cut it in half. So we stripped one end of the wire, and because we like making life easier for ourselves, we will tin the ends of these wires. Hopefully the soldering iron will reach this far. So we use electrical solder. that's the ends of the wires tinned. You can just about see they're tinned nicely, just right to go through the. So the secret of good soldering is to actually keep your soldering iron bit clean. So for that I use a wet sponge, bit of wet sponge. That keeps the end of the soldering iron bit clean. I also turn the soldering iron off with the soldering iron bit tinned. I don't wipe the solder off when I turn it off. That helps preserve the bit. And you should also never file a coated bit, because that is the quickest way to actually destroy it. So, but anyway, that's me. So put the soldering iron back, put that back, put that out of the way. So what we have got now is we have got our dressed bogey, we have got our two wiper pickups, which are a bit long, but okay. We've got our two tinned pieces of silicone coated wire, and the next thing to do is to get the bits out that we're going to need for assembling the pickups. So actually, quickly, just before I do that, what I've got is, it's not entirely necessary, but I've got one of these. Now this is a 3/16 parallel brooch, and what it is used for, if you don't know, is the axles on 7mm models, 7mm models, are generally speaking 3/16 of an inch. So what it will do is, if you have got a bearing which is a little bit tight, or you want to check that your bearing surfaces are good for the axles before you use them, you just check to see whether that passes through. If there's any resistance at all, you can just sort of rotate the bit and it will clean it out. Or if it's got a lot more resistance, which I do sometimes, I put it in a drill and do that on a low speed, of course, because you do not want this to get, you don't want any white metal to get too hot. So what we're going to do next is we will feed the wires through, and if we follow the instructions, it shows you how to feed the wires through. So bearing in mind that the holes are in the rear of the so what we're going to do is we're going to feed the wire through. Okay, so we fed one wire up, and you don't have to worry about what colour wire you use. It's black in the kit. If you buy this wire, I've used the black because you're going to paint the bogey black. So again, what we'll do is we'll feed that to put the wire out the top hole, leave a little bit, just pull it a little bit taut. We're going to adjust this again in a minute because you've got to solder the wire to the plunger pickups, or the, keep saying plunger pickups, but they're wiper pickups. Why aren't you correcting me? They're wiper pickups. Alright, these tails are huge, but it's better to have a bit more than to start messing around joining wires. And you can see that the wire ends are just sticking out here with a little bit of slack on them, so we can solder them up. So probably the best thing to do first is to solder the wires up, because the fixings are plastic and unless you are very good with your soldering iron and very quick with your soldering iron, you will possibly damage the plastic, notwithstanding the white metal. So you might damage the white metal as well. So what we'll do, I've got a hole drilled in the board. Yeah, you may find that my method of working is a bit strange, but I always use this this plywood plank. You can tell by the stains and the burn marks on it that it's had quite a lot of use. It's because the workbench up here is slightly too far away for me to sit on the bed, and there's no room for me to have a chair. So this is probably the best compromise, but all my stuff is made like this, so and it can't be too bad because I make stuff quite successfully. So here we go, and what we've done is we've put the pickup over the end of the wire. Always inspect your work afterwards, and we have got a reasonable solder joint there. So we will turn it over and we will do the other one. Really, you want the insulation of the wire right against the pickup. So we'll just adjust this one by eye. That's it, that's done. You need to keep the solder away from the other two holes, because then it will, well, you'll see why in a moment when we fix the pickups using the plastic bits. But if you don't do that, you'll end up with the mounts being uneven, and you need them to be as flat as possible. So that's okay. So there are your two pickups for the rear wheels, and now what we're going to do is we're going to fix them to the bogie, and for that we will use super glue. We will use our special super glue, and the one I use is this Loctite 60-second all-purpose. It is super glue, but it is quite thick, and it has the added benefit of being able to adjust it. So we'll do one at a time, so that because the parts are quite small, we don't want to lose any parts. We certainly don't want to drop them on the floor if we can help it. So what we need to start off with is we need this part, the part with the two prongs on, and what we do with that is that goes through from the outside, and it doesn't appear to go through the two holes in the pickup. So in that case, what we will do is we will get somewhere in my big bag of tricks there is a tapered brooch. That one, maybe that one's too big. Okay, so we've got the tapered brooch of the correct size that we need, and all we will do is we will just lightly use these on the holes in the pickups. Just make them a little bit larger. Okay, so now you can, let's see if I can drag the focus over. Right, so if you can see the white bits, the prongs have gone through, and the next thing that you need to do is you need to fit the one, there are 4 retaining parts for the pickups, and you need to use one pair as a spacer. So we'll try not to drop them because they are quite small. Might be easier with some tweezers. Have we got some tweezers? Yes, we got some tweezers. So we use some tweezers. So the holes in the retaining parts are not quite good for the prongs, so we use our tapered brooch on those to open out the holes a little bit. You don't want to force these parts because they are fragile and you will break them if you force them too much. Okay, so you might just be able to see that I've made a sandwich with one there, and then now I'm going to feed those through the two lower holes in the bogey frame, and they've just come out the other side, and we will put one on top of that. We'll open out the holes a little bit using the tapered brooch, and I've fitted the retaining one on the back. So I'm not going to glue that one yet. With a bit of luck that should just stay where it is. So what we'll do is we'll go and do the other one on the other side. It's always advisable with small parts never to take more out of the packet than you actually need. That way you don't lose track of them. But I'm working in a bit of an awkward place. And that is done. For the moment, I'm still not going to use the glue yet. I'm going to open my first pack of Slater's wheels. This is a scalpel to cut the plastic. And there's a little bit of flash on the back of the wheels, so what we're going to do, because we got pickups, wiper pickups, we're going to just trim those off with a scalpel, and then we'll rub it on. That one's, oh, there it is. It's a bit. What I've had for years is I've had one of these, and it's basically the correct size for a Slater's hex head, but cut off so it doesn't spin. So I do one up tightly and the other one not so bad. So we'll offer that wheel through, and we won't bother too much about quartering it correctly to start off with. There we go. So as you can see, there's quite a big gap between the wheel treads and the pickups. So what we need to do now is we need to bend the pickups out. And for that we're going to use our pair of pliers, if I can find them. So I've got these round nose pliers. And we'll take the wheel out again so we can bend them out further to make sure that they're going to make electrical contact. So we'll take that off and very gently just bend them out a bit further. So we've bent them out so that they're V-shaped. You can just about see them against my light coloured t-shirt. And now what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that they're squeezed up tightly with the pliers so that they don't move around, and we're going to put a drop of this on. Okay, so the super glue fixing the plastic bit of the pickups, the bits here and here and between, the glue has gone off. We have fitted both sets of wheels and we have trimmed the pickups so that they just project above the wheel tread by maybe 1 millimetre or 2, and they appear to be in good contact with the tread of the rear wheel, and that basically is all it is to the Bogey. All you need to do is just check that the hole in the middle is at least 2.4 millimeters, which this one is. I've checked it with a 2.5 millimeter drill which passes through, so it's slightly oversized. The fact that it is a hole rather than a slot, we may have to modify it later, but that depends when the chassis is built. So that is it. That is basically the Bogey with the pickups on the rear wheels. You've added the wires for the motor, and that is about it for this one. These bits here you can largely ignore until you've got the chassis made, and the next task on the list will be making the basic chassis. But I'm not going to do that now. I will do that the next time, because otherwise this video will be far too long. And that is about it. So you can probably see, might be able to see, hold on, let's move the camera a little bit so that you can see where Boris has been all this time. So there he is. My constant companion when I'm doing this, and for this occasion, thank you for watching, and watch again soon for part 2, which I'll probably do next week. Thank you for watching.